Yo, what's up, everybody? So, I've had a lot of people say that I should do some sort of podcast instead of like constantly talking about all sorts of different subjects at length in my videos. Now, I don't really think anybody's gonna watch this, right? If I'm wrong, then that's great. I'll be happy to do more of these. And honestly, at that point, I could even go forward and make sure that we have like audio files ready, potentially even for download or upload it somewhere else. But for now, I'm just gonna do this. All right, it's just me and the camera. You even got the chat right here, so you can kind of see what the other people think. So let's talk. Let's talk. I was thinking about how to structure this. The first thing that I thought would be cool is if we kind of had like a like weekly, not necessarily like Q&A session, but just kind of like brief like topic session. Like I guess questions are accurate as well. Where we kind of like maybe go over what we did. Like, in the last time we recorded this, we talk about that, and you guys leave some like comments, or you send me an email and tell me like, okay, hey, like here's a question I have for you. Here's something that I would like you to talk about. And then we kind of like go over it like that. And then after that, I'm gonna, like have my own larger topic prepared where I'll just be talking about whatever I want to talk about. I feel like that makes sense. And yeah. Now, quick note, in the video, you might see this beautiful 25 balloons. It is not my birthday today. It was my birthday, actually, last week. Almost exactly last week. Was it exactly last week? No, not quite exactly last week. Point being, it was my birthday was last week. No, it was exactly last week. It was last Wednesday. But Mickey hung up the balloons back there, and frankly speaking, I am just not really like willing to put in the work to throw them out. Oh, you guys want the cat cam? Wait, that's right. I actually think that is a very reasonable request, and let me see if I can just get that going. There we go. Look at that. We even got it in a bigger window than we would normally have it in. Isn't that nice? Look at that. She's a bit bigger than she would normally be. All right. So we've got the cat cam set up. We've got chat going on. And that's just going to be me talking. So, oh, and also, if people like this kind of stuff, I am also interested and kind of like willing to potentially invest some money into like maybe getting a new microphone set up. Something that I've actually been thinking about for a while, but I haven't really felt a pressing need for it, to get some new audio recording devices, because as stands, I think it's fine. But okay. So, for the first topic, I thought let's talk about card games. I want to talk about card games all the time. It is the only thing that is on my mind. Why are card games the only thing that's on my mind? Well, I've talked about this before, but plan B after Spark, if we don't get any more funding, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not looking good right now. But plan B is that I make a card game and I just pay for it out of pocket. Now, why would I do that, right? Like, if I have money that I can finance something like that, why would I not rather do something safer with it? Well, let me be honest with you. I could go and, take out a loan and buy an apartment or a house, possibly even, but I don't want to. Honestly, it's just not something that really interests me. I like our apartment. I'm quite happy here. It is in a good location for all of our needs, and it's just something that I am pretty content with. I have no need to upgrade this situation. I have no real interest in investing into anything else. And I could try and maybe build a different game in a different genre that might be a bit more forgiving, possibly. But I have to say, I personally don't actually agree with the assessment that a lot of people have, that there is, like, it's so difficult to succeed in card games. I actually think there's a lot of games that did really, really well. Um, and, I would even say there's a high percentage of games that were released that did really well. But, like the new thing on the horizon, of course, would be to make an auto chess. Or we could like even go into a different direction and do something different entirely. Maybe just like release a single player game or a small mobile game, something that takes, like 2 or 3 months to develop, and then hopefully it makes some money. And yeah, you're right. That will probably be more sensible. But here's the thing. I don't want to do those things. Why do I not want to do them? They just don't interest me. I don't want to do them, right? I myself find myself in this situation where either I do the card game or I do nothing because I don't want to do anything else. I have no interest in anything else. And it may seem silly, but I'm not going to invest my money into creating a project that I'm not interested in creating. That's not really how it works. But the thing is, if I don't do that and if I don't have a new project, I feel like I will just go mad. As much as I enjoy doing YouTube, as much as I enjoy doing Twitch, I think it's something I can't do as the only thing I do. I used to do that, but I felt like I was getting stupid. Every day I was just slowly getting dumber and dumber. And it wasn't good. I didn't challenge myself. I didn't feel like I was progressing with my life. Yes, I was making money, and yes, I was getting viewers and all of that stuff, but I wasn't feeling like I, as a person, was improving in any capacity. I didn't feel like I was learning any skills or getting any better at anything. And that isn't nice, That's just not very enjoyable, and I don't want to do that anymore. Now, that doesn't mean I don't want to do YouTube or Twitch. I just don't want to do it as the only thing I do. I want to do it while I do something else. So, that leaves me with a few alternatives. I can make my plan B, my card game that I want to make, that I'm really passionate about. Or I could try and get a job. And I honestly, I just look at that and I'm like, you know what? Sometimes you gotta take risks. I usually always play it very safe. Pretty much my entire life, I've always kind of played it safe. Well, that's not true, actually. But, I like to, monetarily, I think that's the right way. In terms of money, I always play it safe. And that's why I have been able to save up quite a bit. But now I'm also in a situation where I have saved money and then I don't know. It's just sitting there and gotta take a risk eventually, And I think it makes sense. So the goal here, by the way, isn't for me to fully fund the development myself. But instead the goal is that I fund enough of the development that we can get a playable version of the game out with a very limited pool of cards. About 120 or so cards is what I have in mind. Then with that build of the game, with those 120 cards, we go to Kickstarter. And then on Kickstarter, we basically show up and we're like, hey, here's the game. And, we need like 50 grand, which is less than I got for Disasters, if you remember, Disasters is my little board game that I made. And for that one, I only wanted 7 grand on Kickstarter, which I think was like a nice small amount, right? But we got 60. And it is a card game. We did actually ship it. Everybody got their copies. We have sold a good amount of copies, overall. Like we've sold over 3,000 copies, which is like a very good amount in my opinion. And it got good reviews on Board Game Geek. It's sitting at like a 7.7 right now, which you might be like, wait, that doesn't sound that good. Settlers of Catan is at a 7.8 on Board Game Geek. That is a very good amount. Has Disasters turned a profit? Yes, it has. Disasters is definitely a product that has turned, I would say, a pretty significant profit. Not even just a profit, but a pretty significant one. I have no complaints there. Not even a little bit. So it's something that I'm quite proud of, and I think it gives me a good track record going into, a new Kickstarter project that would also be a card game, where I could be like, hey guys, we made one project and was similar to this, and now we want to make a new card game, just a bigger one, a bigger scale. We're gonna need a little bit more money for that, and I think that's fair, no? So that's kind of my thinking. That's why I want to do what I want to do. In terms of the game, I currently I like the names Chroma 4 Factions or Chroma Factions Divided. Haven't fully decided yet. Something that's gonna be coming. But that's okay. Now, that's about my card game. Let's talk about other card games. I have been playing a lot of card games. Just a lot of them. I've played Magic, I have played Eternal, I have played Hearthstone, I have played Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, I have played some Yu-Gi-Oh! I have played Elder Scrolls Legends, I have played War of Omens, which is actually one of the best ones. It's a very unknown one. I've played Shadow Wars. And I have to say, I am not very happy with most of them. I don't think they are really all that great. Now, what I mean to say there is that they are not really what I'm looking for in a card game. They're just sadly not quite what I hope to see. The situation with Hearthstone, let's start with that. So Hearthstone is a game that I personally have actually played since the game was in its early closed beta. I got my key at the Gamescom. Yeah, I believe we didn't even get it for playing Hearthstone. I believe I got it because I played Heroes of the Storm. They were just about releasing Heroes of the Storm, and that's when Hearthstone was still in closed beta. I think my timeline is right on that. So I went to the Gamescom. We stood in line for Heroes of the Storm. Well, it was fun. I was there with my friends at the time. And we were just kind of standing in line. And honestly, at the time, we were already, we were mobile players. We played Dota, the original one. We played Heroes of New Earth a lot at the time. So we go into Heroes of the Storm. And everybody in line, they're just a scrub. Frankly, they don't know what they're doing. I get Illidan. I remember that. And I believe I went 27-0. Which was very funny to me. I mean, I was just like slaughtering everybody left and right. They didn't stand a chance. Illidan being a hero that allows you to like teleport around the map to enemy heroes and just like nuke them down, especially if you have a high level lead. So we played that, and then afterwards we kind of like got to sign up for, we got to provide some feedback, and then they were basically like, hey, if we have special offers, like give us an email address and we'll send them to you. And I was like, sure, why not? I like Blizzard games, right? At the time I was playing StarCraft 2. I was playing, well, actually, that was the big one, I guess. I guess that was it. But I did enjoy Heroes of the Storm as well. So I was like, all right, you know what hurt can come from this, right? So, Warcraft 3, I used to play a lot of Warcraft 3, right? So I signed up, and then I get my Hearthstone beta key. And, been playing Hearthstone pretty much since then. And it is it is a very good game. It is a very, very good game. I'm actually just gonna say that. Now, Hearthstone has some problems, in my opinion. Now, most of these problems are actually by choice. They aren't because they don't know better. I am 100% confident that if they wanted to make the game that I want to have, they could, and they could be excellent at it. But that is not the game they want to make, and that's kind of what's frustrating to me a little bit, because I think that's not the game a lot of people want to play, especially the people that have kind of like matured their card game tastes with Hearthstone, which I think would also include me. So Hearthstone does everything very safe. It always plays things very safe. There's very little kind of like complexity to everything. They try to keep things to the basics, which is also why they have the basic set. Oh, the basic set. The basic set is a big problem. I think it's called classic and base set. Or is it basic? I'm not sure. One of them is definitely called classic. Those two are big problem with Hearthstone's general design, and is what creates the problem that I'm about to bring up. So the big problem I see with Hearthstone as a whole is that now in 2019, they just released a new expansion, and the game still feels like it's the exact same game it was day one. And you might be like, okay, wait, that's good, right? Isn't that great? Well, no. Because usually with card games, you want to see them evolve over time. You want them to get more kind of like features. You want them to introduce new interesting cards, new crazy stuff. But Hearthstone, it just really plays exactly the same way. As a result, I think the game is great for new players. If somebody wants to start playing Hearthstone, they get into it right now. The game is still, it feels good. It feels as good as it did on day one. But as somebody that has been playing it since day one, I'm wishing it did something else, Kind of think about, for example, Dota 2, right? Imagine if Dota 2 still felt like it did 6 years ago. I don't think you would be too happy about that. There's not a lot of games that can really continue to keep their long-term players' interests without change. Now, why does Hearthstone stay the same? Well, there's a few reasons for that. The first one, they are just not willing to take any risks. They are always playing it very safe. If they do something crazy, they just do a single thing. Like they might have an expansion there. Last year they gave or was that 2 years ago? I don't even remember fully. I think it was last year. They gave everybody, a hero card. They gave everybody a weapon card. All of the hero, like the different classes, they got a new hero card. They got a new weapon card. And while that does work in the way that it creates something kind of interesting for a little while, it just kind of starts losing its novelty, because okay, so you it's one card, that's how far you're gonna go. And other than that, everything is the same, you've got creatures kind of slamming into other creatures. You've got all of the spells are mostly just deal damage or generate a random card and all of that stuff. And it just feels like it's still the same. And a lot of that does come also from the fact that Hearthstone uses a classic and a basic set as one of its core design principles. So in Hearthstone, you have classic and basic. Classic is, both of these sets are the core of the game, right? As in every rotation, every time. Well, actually, let me explain rotations first if you aren't familiar with that. But in card games, this is a very common thing. All of them do, and it's a very good thing. That's actually something that card games should do because it keeps their meta games. It keeps their meta games fresh and healthy. But as new expansions get added to the game, As new cards get added to the card pool, they remove old cards from the card pool. Terra Talk, thank you so much for the 8 months. I feel like I stumbled into something serious. No. Nothing serious. We're good. I'm just talking. So they add new cards into the card pool and then remove old cards out of the card pool. By doing that, you keep the game fresh. You keep the game interesting because there's always something new happening. Now, Hearthstone does this a bit differently. It always adds new card into the card pool and removes old cards out of the card pool. But what it doesn't do is remove all of the cards. Instead, there's the basic and classic set, which are in every rotation. No matter what cards are currently in the card pool and what cards are being removed from the card pool, basic and classic are always in the card pool and are never removed from the card pool. Now, you might say, okay, well, I mean, like, I kind of get that, right? Like, that kind of makes it so it feels familiar. And that's true, it does feel familiar. It also serves a different purpose. You know, Hearthstone is monetized through packs. So it makes it so that as somebody like me, right, I have been playing the game for a long time. I own pretty much every classic and basic card, just all of them. So I can return at any time I want to play. I really only need to like catch up on like 1 or 2 expansions and I'm good to go. And that is a definite benefit of it. But there are some downsides. The biggest one being that Classic and Basic has some core cards in it that have seen play every single expansion. Every time new cards get added into the game, they need to compete with Classic and Basic. And if they aren't good enough, then they don't make the cut. Meaning there are certain cards and certain deck archetypes that have been part of Hearthstone's identity since day one. And that is a bit of a problem. Because that just really makes it so that even though it's 2019, the game has been out for 6 years, we still play against the same defensive, like control warrior that uses brawl and shield block and shield bash and execute. We still play against that same deck with only a few things swapped in and out because Classic and Basic are part of the game. That's something that Magic the Gathering does better. Magic the Gathering, instead of having a Classic and Basic set, once a year they release a so-called core set. So they actually just released the core set 2020. What is the core set? Well, usually when card games release a new expansion, that expansion will have a theme, right? For example, the most recent Hearthstone expansion is called, what is it called? Saviors of Uldum. And it's about how the League of Explorers, which is like a certain group of characters, returns from an expedition and fights the League of Evil, which is a group of villains that we were introduced to in the previous expansion. And that, you know, like it tells a nice storyline and it works really well. Magic does the same thing with its expansions. So in War of the Spark, which was the expansion that got released before Core Set 2020, in War of the Spark, you had a bunch of different planeswalkers appear and fight an invasion. Well, actually, I guess they were fighting the invasion of Nicol Bolas, the dragon god, who wanted to steal the sparks, which are the kind of like life force of the planeswalkers, which is like a certain kind of wizard. Don't worry about the details right now. If you're not familiar with this, don't worry about it. But Nicol Bolas wanted to steal their sparks and ascend to godhood. And there was like a war going on, the War of the Spark, right? In that expansion, they introduced a lot more planeswalkers than they would normally do. And, they really kind of went crazy with that. And then they have cards that kind of like work along with that. For example, in kind of the story, Nicol Bolas used a spell called the Elder Spell to steal sparks from the planeswalkers, killing them in the process. And so there's a card in the in War of the Spark that is called the Elder Spell, which you can use to kill a planeswalker, actually multiple of them if you want to. So that is kind of the basic idea of how these expansions work usually. The core set every year is a bit different though. The core set doesn't make any pretense for here's a storyline, here's what's happening. Instead, what the core set does is it reprints cards that Wizards of the Coast thinks are important for the health of the game, especially with the expansions that are coming and will be released in the coming year. So the core set kind of sets the stage for that, where they introduce cards or reintroduce cards that are mostly meant to build a nice groundwork and basis for the coming expansions and work well with that. Hey, thank you, Rogue. Thank you very much for the 18 months. Appreciate it. So in that regard, I think the core set works much better because it still has this constant theme of like, okay, here are familiar cards that everybody knows, but they can be adjusted. So if in one year, their playtests show, okay, if we have, this one specific card in the format right now, then there's gonna be, we are restricted in what we can do. We can't introduce this other card that we would like to release. It's just not possible, and it would create problems. And so having some restrictions on that by rotating out the old core set and rotating in a new one where that problematic card might not be printed allows them to have a lot more variety. And because a lot of the core sets are reprints, they don't need to worry too much about the core set being a huge design effort, right? The bigger the thing about the core set, the difficulty there isn't so much coming up with 100 new cards. It's much more about choosing the right ones to lead to an interesting meta game in the coming year. Now, there are some problems with this as well. What's the problem with the core set? Well, the problem with the core set is that you have to pay for it. Yeah, you have to pay for it. It's an additional expansion that gets added in each year. And when it rotates out, your cards are now worthless, especially if you're playing the digital client only. Right? So I, for example, don't really play paper Magic at all. And I really have no interest in playing paper Magic, to be completely honest. And so I play digital, and it's very expensive. It's very expensive. It just is. All of them are. All of the card games are very expensive. And so the new core set just got released. And with the next set, I believe they're going to do their rotation, where they rotate out a bunch of the sets that were released before that, as well as the old core set. Now, here's the thing, though. And that's where all of my cards are. And I am not kidding when I'm just I'm fully planning to just abandon Magic at that point, like Arena. I'm just gonna stop playing as soon as they do that rotation, because I'm not they just took all of my cards away, right? I can't do anything with them anymore. And in Arena, you can't disenchant them, right? And this is just another problem of the business model. While the business model does create kind of, I guess it does make a lot of money just because you're constantly getting people to buy cards, it does create some problems in the gameplay, where it can just be a bit rough for people to keep up, right? Especially if they don't have a lot of money to spend. And I'm personally not a big fan of that. And talking about the business model of pretty much every card game, they all do this. Even War of Omens. Let me talk about War of Omens really quick. War of Omens is a very, very small card game. It's a free-to-play game on Steam. It's not particularly pretty. It's not particularly complex. It doesn't even have a lot of cards. I think the total amount of cards in War of Omen is 150 or something like that. Despite that, it's actually one of my favorites. I know. It's actually very good. And it's very interesting. It does a lot of things very differently from other games. And I would actually recommend that you play it. But War of Omens, yet again, sells packs. So, can't really play it, right? Now here's another problem for War of Omens. Nobody plays War of Omens. Nobody knows the game. So now that nobody knows the game, if I go into War of Omens, a game that literally has like 15 concurrent players and nobody plays multiplayer, how am I? I'm not going to buy packs now, right? You expect me to buy packs so I can then not play multiplayer because the game doesn't have any players? So it kind of like locks people out of playing it, right? And similarly, I played some Elder Scrolls Legends. Okay, I played Elder Scrolls Legends. I played through the campaign. It's actually a very interesting game. It's cool. It's neat. They want me to buy packs again. Everybody always wants me to buy packs again. And they're so expensive. And I need to buy packs for like 5 different expansions. So I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to buy packs for Hearthstone, Magic the Gathering, War of Omens, Elder Scrolls Legends, right? Shadowverse. Shadowverse is another game. I'm not going to buy packs from Shadowverse now. I'm not going to go and buy packs for, what is the game called? Eternal. I'm not going to go and buy packs for Gwent. Because you can't reasonably expect me as a single consumer to buy packs. Like not even just like a full set of cards, but just packs for every single one of these games. Especially if you consider how expensive actually getting these packs is. If we look at Hearthstone, people have calculated it, and it costs you about $180 to get 95% of the cards in a single expansion. 95% of the cards. You don't even get all of the cards for $180. Think about that for a second. Right? What other video game would that be acceptable in? Imagine if the new FIFA came out, but instead of being released once a year, it gets released 3 times a year. Instead of being a new game, it's just an expansion to the previous game, and it's $180, and you only get 95% of the game. That wouldn't be acceptable in any capacity, right? Like that would be insane. New Call of Duty, 3 times a year, $180, and maybe you don't get all the weapons. What is that? Right? That is ridiculous. And you know what's even more ridiculous? Hearthstone isn't even the most expensive card game. Magic the Gathering Arena is more expensive. Yeah, it's more expensive than that. Like, isn't that insane? The fact that like Magic the Gathering Arena is even more expensive. Like for Magic the Gathering Arena, you need to spend closer to $300 per expansion to get all of the cards. Like that's just insane, right? So I as a single consumer, I if I want to play one of these games, it's not. Let me be fair. They do very much usually offer kind of additional ways to unlock cards and additional ways to earn cards. But I need to play the game for that, right? I need to actually like do my daily quests, whatever they give me, and in that way, I'm forced to only play a single game. I can't go and play Magic the Gathering Arena. I can't go and play Hearthstone really at the same time because I just don't have the time for that. I have a job. I mean, I guess me in particular, I actually have 2 jobs, but like other people, they have a job. And in that way, you can't just expect people to spend that much time on 2 games while buying packs, right? Like this is in addition to buying packs. So spending, $50 every few months and then not even get all of the cards. And then expect that for like, 1, 2, 3, 4 games. It doesn't work that way. So this entire situation that the developers of these games have created kind of locks people into only playing one of them. Right? Think about it. Like everybody is forced to play a single card game. Not because they want to, but because they can't afford to play more than one. Now that's a bit silly now, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, to be completely honest. It's it's a bit tricky, like what exactly can you do about that? Well, I mean, anyway, let's just kind of move past that. So let me talk a bit about a few different games. So, Magic the Gathering, I personally am not a big fan of it, to be completely honest. I don't like it very much, purely from a gameplay point of view. And here is like the biggest problem I have with Magic the Gathering. I think a lot of Magic the Gathering interaction with your opponent is about making your opponent play as little Magic the Gathering as possible. If I play Hearthstone, I feel like I get to play the game most of the time. Like I shuffle my cards in, and I can just kind of like play, and then we have some interaction with my opponents, and there's like lots of smaller interactions that happen. At the end of it, one player comes out victorious. While in Magic, I more often than not feel like the entire match is decided in the initial draw of cards. For example, there's a card called Thought Erasure. Thought Erasure is a 2-mana spell, so you can play it on turn 2, that allows you to look at your opponent's hand, choose a non-land card and discard it. And then you can look at the top of your own deck and choose whether or not you want to keep that card on the top of the deck or discard it. This means that what this card ideally does is it makes it so your opponent can't play any cards. Right? That's a very common strategy. You Thought Erasure your opponent on turn 2. Oh, hello. I'm recording something. Goodbye. You Thought Erasure something on turn 2, and then you, like kind of take out the card they could play next turn, and then prepare your next turn in a way so they can play a card again. A similar card, or like a similar thing in Magic that exists quite a bit, is something called a counterspell. A counterspell is a card that just straight up prevents your opponent from casting a spell, being any card, right? In Magic, there's 2 types of cards. There's lands and there's spells. While lands provide mana, they don't have any other effect usually. And spells are everything, like a creature, planeswalker, an instant or sorcery, which are things like deal 3 damage to something, And so a counterspell is something that just allows you to purge out an opponent from doing anything at all. So the way this works is a counterspell prevents a card from being played. Like it doesn't destroy it after it enters the game. It prevents it from being played at all. So what do players do with this? Well, they stop people from playing cards, as you might imagine. A very common strategy is something called Esper Control, where a lot of the deck consists of cards like counterspells, cards like Darwin's Veto or Absorb. That's what they're called. What they do is they just stop your opponent from playing cards. So even if your opponent has a card that they want to play, they can't, because it will just get countered and instantly enter the graveyard. Then they have cards like, what is she called? Parter of Wales. But she's got a different name as well. But what that card does is she prevents your opponent from drawing additional cards. So now you can't catch up while they themselves are drawing additional cards. I think Nesset. Is that right? I'm not sure. But either way, right? There's a card called Teferi. Teferi Time Raveler. What Teferi Time Raveler does, it prevents your opponent from casting spells outside of their turn or outside of when they could cast a sorcery, which is really most of the time. Which means Narset. That's right, Narset. That's what she's called. So what does that mean? Well, again, it stops your opponent from really interacting with you and doing anything. I have found, from my experience playing Magic the Gathering, and I have played it a lot. I have played probably hundreds of hours of Arena by now, because Magic the Gathering is the game everybody always looks at and everybody talks about. This is the end-all, be-all card game. This is the granddaddy. This is what invented the genre, right? And I have played so much Magic the Gathering, and from my experience, most of the games are decided by turn 3 or 4. That's just when they are over. And most of the time, that's not because of any interaction. That's just because of the cards that the players drew in the initial opening hand. If a mono red deck gets Diagonal Monkey and then Runaway Steamkin, probably like even better if they get 2 into a bunch of spells, you're dead on turn 4. And even if they aren't dead then, they'll just drop an Experimental Frenzy, which gives them basically infinite card draw, and then just kill you anyway. If you look at a game, if we look at a different deck, if we look at any sort of like mono green or Tron deck, which are just trying to get big creatures out, those decks, yet again, they just kind of like slam all of their resources on the board immediately. If we look at a deck like, what's it called? Nexus of Fate, which won the Mythic Championship not too long ago. So this is a big tournament winning deck that I think was $100,000 price pool or something like that. But what Nexus of Fate does is it allows you to take an extra turn. And so there's a deck that's built around the idea of just reusing Nexus of Fate as often as possible. Now you might be like, okay, how can I reuse it that often? Well, Nexus of Fate allows you to take an extra turn, and after you use it, instead of going into your graveyard, it goes back into your deck. It's actually impossible to not have Nexus of Fate just go straight back into that player's deck. So, what you do all the time is you just like play Nexus of Fate over and over again. And this creates some problems because, as you might imagine, that means players can infinitely loop turns. There was this one famous case where on a Twitch stream, there was a streamer who was just playing the game normally, playing against somebody with Nexus of Fate, and the streamer actually managed to destroy every single win condition in the player with the Nexus of Fate in their deck. Right, just managed to kill everything that they had that would help them win their game. So what did the player with Nexus of Fate do? Played Nexus of Fate, took an extra turn, had only a single card in the deck, well actually 4 cards in the deck, all of which were Nexus of Fate, and then played the next Nexus of Fate, took an extra turn, played another Nexus of Fate, got an extra turn, and just kept going like that for 3 hours. When I say 3 hours, I mean literally 3 hours. That game didn't end because the game ended normally. That game ended because Wizards of the Coast stepped in and shut it down. And that's a problem. Those kind of oversights I don't really think are very acceptable. And they also kind of show a little bit of like a fundamental misunderstanding of how people treat these games, I think. Another problem I have with Nexus of Fate is that it really kind of doesn't lead to interaction, right? Like it's another card that where really if your opponent gets like a Nexus of Fate going at the right moment, the game is just over. Was it really hard? Was it really that hard to print those loops in the side? No, it isn't. You just don't add the clause that goes back into your deck, but they did, right? So, if we look at more decks, the deck that won the most recent Grand Prix that kind of like really blew up is a deck called Banned Scapeshift. Again, what this deck does is it completely ignores your opponent. People always talk about how Magic is a game of interaction, but Banned Scapeshift, another tournament-winning deck, just completely ignores your opponent. All it does is it uses a card that allows you to create zombies if you put lands into play, and then a card that allows you to put a lot of, and then the entire deck is just built around putting as many lands into play at once as possible. So how games with that deck usually work out, and I say this with great confidence because I have been spamming Banned Scapeshift. Some of the few decks I actually enjoy playing. How the games with Banned Scapeshift usually work out is that one player just kind of like ramps, like gets as many lands, as much mana out as possible, and then plays Scapeshift, spawns 40 zombies on the board, and instantly wins the game without the other player getting to do anything. And really the only interaction there is, did your opponent draw enough early pressure to prevent you from doing this? And if they did, then that's great. And if they didn't, then they lose. And again, you may notice this goes back to that idea or this problem that I have with Magic, where so much of it is decided in the initial draw, much, much, much more than in Hearthstone. Now let's talk about the last problem. The last problem are lands. Now, lands are Magic's greatest invention, but also Magic's worst curse. I know that sounds a bit weird. How can it be both? Well, the thing is that lands allow Magic to do very interesting things. In case you don't know what lands are, in Magic, you need mana to play cards. You get mana by playing lands. So every turn you can play one land. A land comes in 5 different colors. It comes in red, blue, green, black, and white. Now that allows you to have multiple colors of lands in your deck. So for example, you can build a deck that is red-green, and then you put red and green lands into your deck, and then you can play both red and green cards. And red and green cards have different effects. Green cards are usually all about being kind of big creatures or allowing you to generate more mana, while red is about kind of like getting, lightning bolts out. Or also one thing that red is also very big on is dragons, right? So red is either like going face, killing you as quickly as possible, or get big dragons out. So with a red-green deck, you might say, okay, cool, let's use the green side of it to generate as much mana as possible, and let's use the red side of it to get big dragons out with that mana. That's really interesting. Similarly speaking, if we look at, for example, something like black-white, where black is usually about sacrificing your HP, dropping low on HP to get big effects, and also sacrificing just in general, sacrificing your creatures. Well, to get powerful effects. Well, white is a color that is all about generating HP and also putting a lot of small creatures on the board. Lots of smaller things. Well, turns out that's a nice combination. So you use white to generate HP so you don't accidentally die, and you use white to generate a lot of small creatures, and then you use black to sacrifice those creatures and sacrifice your own HP to do big effects. That is cool, right? And now let's think about how can we combine black and green? How can we combine blue and white? How can we combine 3 or 4 colors, For example, white, blue, black is called Esper. And that is, it's a very powerful combination. Band is green, blue, white. That is, the band Scapeshift deck I was talking about earlier uses those 3 colors. So that is the advantage of the color system, and honestly, it's brilliant in that regard. It's just absolutely fantastic. Having different colors available to you is incredible. What's the problem? Well, you need to draw lands. The problem of lands is that they are a physical card in your deck, and you need to play a lot of them. The decks that play the least lands probably play around 19 out of their 60 cards, and the decks that play the most, like for example Band Scapeshift, plays 28. So that's almost half the entire deck. Now, you draw 1 card a turn, and what if that card is just a land when you actually need something else? Or what if you need land, but you drew something else? This is a big problem that happens all the time. People have a term for it. It's either mana flooding, or I actually forgot the other term. Is it starving? No, maybe somebody in chat can help me remember. But the idea of drawing too much of it or drawing too little of it is a constant thing. Mana screwed. That's right, mana screwed. That's what people call it. So this is a very important aspect of the game, and it happens all the time. You can see it in tournament games, you can see it in games in every single format, without exception. If you ever play any Magic, you will see this happens to you very often. I would probably go as far as to say this happens 30% of the games, that you just get messed up on mana, right? You don't draw enough of it, or you draw too much of it. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. It is just very unfortunate, and it's like a huge luck factor, frankly speaking, which is a shame, because it's otherwise a very strategic game. And it's just so ingrained into Magic. It's not something that's a fixable problem at this stage. You can't remove lands from Magic. It doesn't work that way, right? But it is something that is an issue. And I think it's something that's a bit less of an issue if you're used to playing Magic the Gathering in person. I think a lot of these problems are much less significant if you're playing in person. So, for example, like not having the right collection. Well, if you're just playing casually with some friends without going to a tournament, you can really play any cards. Like, who gives a shit? Like, I have friends like that who, for a long time, until they sold all of their Magic cards, all of a sudden from one day to the other, that was very surprising to me. But for a long time, they just had like weird cards, and they would only play against each other in their own weird little format, and they wouldn't ever play against anybody else. It's like, okay, you know what? Whatever works for you, that's fine, I guess. So in person, a lot of these problems are not as significant. If you're playing against, a friend with 3 to 4, and then you get mana screwed, what do? Well, you just start a new game. But in a digital format, we are playing ranked ladder, and really you're just kind of trying to win some games. It just doesn't feel good. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a bit of a different environment. My last complaint about Magic, and this is something that only applies to digital. I want to make this absolutely clear. This is not a problem I have with physical Magic. I think this is something that works incredibly well in the physical space. And there are 0 problems I have with this specific topic in the physical space. But in the digital space, I think this is not very good. That is interaction on your opponent's turn. Magic has so-called instant speed, which are cards that can be played pretty much anytime a different card is used, or you enter a different phase, or you do anything at all. As long as anything in the game is happening, you can play an instant speed card as a response. Okay? It's very straightforward, I feel. Also, on your opponent's turn. That's the important thing. So, what does this mean? Well, in paper Magic, this kind of leads to people, when they play a card, they ask, do you do something? And then the other player either says yes or no. Fine. In digital Magic, whenever you play a card, or change faces, or do anything at all, and your opponent is holding an instant speed card, they need to confirm that they either want to play the card or do not want to play the card. Which means anytime you play a card, it is interrupted. There's no nice, smooth flow to this. Every single time you do anything at all, it gets interrupted. Every time. Every time. And that is something that I find very annoying. It would be fine if players were always watching this screen. But I'm going to be honest with you. Nobody does that. I don't do that. That's just not how people play card games. I think Hearthstone has kind of conditioned us all into tabbing out during our opponent's turn. I do that. I'm guilty of that. I'm sorry. That's what I do too. Problem in Magic, if you tap out during your opponent's turn and you have an instant speed card and your opponent has anything they can do at all, they gotta wait out the turn timer, because you aren't here to click the button. If you don't pay attention for 1 second, they gotta wait out until you do. There's just no smoothness to the gameplay at all. It's constantly interrupted by everything, and it is very unfortunate. And something that I personally find irritating. This also gives you information on their hand, right? If they don't have an instant, they don't get the pop-up, right? Well, Magic Arena tries to kind of simulate this to not create that situation that you just described. So yes, actually, you're right. It would create a situation where when I play a card and I see my opponent isn't, like my card just plays out super smoothly immediately, I can assume that my opponent doesn't have an instant speed card, either that or they're very fast at clicking. But to avoid that, Magic has actually implemented a random buffer that even if your opponent doesn't have an instant speed card, it will still randomly lag it and pause it to kind of create the illusion of they might have one. So even if your opponent is watching and paying full attention and clicking the buttons perfectly, or they can't even do anything, the game still is laggy every time and it always gets slowed down. Do you see why that is something I consider an issue? What I like in my gameplay, and this is something where Hearthstone absolutely beats the living hell out of Magic, is smoothness. I want it to move smoothly. I want it to feel nice. I want it to feel good. And that's where Magic just doesn't keep up. And again, this is a problem that really only exists in the digital space. In the physical space, this is not a problem. In the physical space, Magic does not have this concern. But in the digital one, it does. And that is something that kind of bothers me. So that's kind of my issues I have with Magic and kind of my issues I have with Hearthstone. All right, we can talk about some other games a little bit. Let's talk about Shadowverse. I think Shadowverse is a game that is... So Shadowverse has a problematic art style. If you're not familiar with Shadowverse art style, it is the most weeby thing you have seen in your entire life by a very significant margin. And it is unbearable, frankly. It is just not enjoyable. I do not like Shadowverse's art style, even in the slightest. Not to mention that Shadowverse does not have a different interface for PC or mobile. So you're always playing on the mobile version, which makes it just even more ugly. On top of that, the particle effects aren't all that pretty. Here's how bad I think Shadowverse is visually and how clustered and ugly it really is. Even if you completely ignore all of the weeb shit, like I am willing to forgive every single card art in the entire game, every single character art, all of it. Even if we ignore all of that, it is still unbelievably ugly. It is still just so bad. So this is something I find annoying. Because here's the thing about Shadowverse. Shadowverse is actually not a bad game. As a pure game, from purely a gameplay perspective, I probably like Shadowverse more than Magic. Probably do. Probably not quite as much as Hearthstone or War of Omens, but I think it's definitely up there. I feel like the gameplay is nice and smooth and interesting. It has cards that are more complex than Hearthstone's and really kind of like dares to go a little bit more out there. Right, like a card I saw while playing Shadowverse was like some creature, but it dies and then it like respawns as like totem. And then the totem dies and it respawns as like a different totem. It goes for like 5 different totems. Then it respawns as like a last totem, and that totem, just when it dies, it just says you win the game, and dies at like after 1 turn. So you as an opponent, you have like a lot of opportunities to kind of like interact with it and try and prevent that, or try to kill your opponent before that happens. But it is still. It is just kind of interesting. I don't think it's actually a good card. It's probably a very bad card, but it is interesting, and it's something that Hearthstone wouldn't risk doing, right? So I like Shadowverse in theory. It has some problems in its, card design as well. I think the biggest problem really being that it goes a little bit too far in terms of how portrays its complexity, I guess, right? Like instead of keeping the cards nice and simple to understand or keywording their card text, what they tend to do is they just tend to like fill it with boxes like this, right? Like they just like put like a ton of text on there, which makes it really intimidating at first. So I'm not a huge fan of that. Right, I wish it had a bit more. I wish it had a bit of a cleaner design to it, right? If it was just a little bit more polished in its design, not even just from a visual perspective, but from a gameplay perspective, I think it would feel a little bit better. Hearthstone has a card that says "Win the Game," also known as the Mage's Quest. Well, I mean, you can think that, but you would be wrong. There was a combo deck that used the Mage's Quest, which was a bit of a frustrating deck to play against. But I mean, Mage Quest isn't even in the game anymore. I believe there's a new one, isn't there? And that one, is that one good yet? I don't even know what the new one is, to be honest. So anyway, I have played some Yu-Gi-Oh as well. I think Yu-Gi-Oh is just kind of not a good game. I know that sounds hard, but the more I learn about Yu-Gi-Oh, and I've been doing a lot of research on it as well, I don't think it's a very good game. It got so many problems. I don't even know where to begin listing them. I really don't know where to begin listing them. So I'm just not even gonna bother. If you like Yu-Gi-Oh and I offended you, I'm sorry, but I just do not think it's a very good game. Talk about Artifact. There's not much to talk about Artifact. Artifact is also just not a very good game. One of the big problems with Artifact, well, there's actually, oh my god, I don't know where to start with Artifact. I really do not know where to start with Artifact's problems. Well, the first one in the context of card games is that Artifact is not a card game. That would be the first problem in regards to Artifact's card game design is that it's not actually a card game. It's actually a board game with card game elements. Which you might be like, how does that, like, is that really a difference? Yeah, I mean, like, it is. It's like saying, what's the difference between a first person and a third person shooter? Except that the difference here is actually probably bigger, right? But like, Artifact is just not actually a card game. Like, yes, it has cards, but that doesn't make it a card game. What Artifact is, it's about game pieces, like board game-like game pieces that are the most important thing. The heroes, right? The heroes are not cards; they are board game pieces. Similarly, Artifact has the problem of forcing players to put 15 cards into their deck that they do not want to have in their deck, which I just don't understand why you would do that, right? Then the question, of course, is 3 lanes. Why? Like, just legit, why? Why? What does that add? It's kind of stupid. Right? All of the randomness. There's so much randomness in the game that just doesn't need to be there for no reason. Yeah, I don't like Artifact. Don't think it is good in any way, especially not in the context of talking about card games, because it's fundamentally not a card game. And I think it's like a big problem because they didn't actually like figure that out themselves. Like the developers themselves didn't realize they were not actually making a card game. They thought the whole time what they were doing is building a card game, but no, you did not make a card game. What else have I played? I've played Duelist, which I found Duelist falls into this category of card game that I think tries to be a gimmick. Where it's like, this is nice, Duelist, what is it called? Is it called Feria? Something with an F. But there's another game like that, where it's just, I think, not Eternal, Elder Scrolls Legends as well. Like, those 3 games, to me, they're just kind of like, hey, this is, it's a card game, but here's a twist. And as much as, having a twist like that is good, I personally am not really looking for a twist. I would rather just have like a nice, solid gameplay experience that is just nicely designed and tight and feels good, right? So, like that's kind of where I feel like it would be. Yeah, it's not my favorite. It's not really what I'm looking for. I don't think Duelist is a bad game. I don't think Duelist is a bad game at all. I don't want to say that Feria is a bad game. I don't want to say that Elder Scrolls Legends is a bad game. All 3 of these games are actually pretty good games. They just kind of fall into this like, hey, this is a twist category. And I don't want to... That's just not what I'm looking for. Me personally, right? And if that's something that you're interested in, then give those games a try. They're good. I mean, that's assuming you're willing to buy packs. But yeah, Solitaire is only one good card game. Solitaire is very good. I actually enjoy Solitaire quite a bit. So that's kind of, I think that's the current. I mean, we can briefly bring up Eternal. Eternal is Magic, but everything worse. Just take Magic the Gathering and take all of the problems in Magic the Gathering and make them worse. And then you have Eternal. I do not like Eternal. Sorry. I think Eternal is just really. It just seems like it wants to be Magic really, really badly, and then also seems like it's like we realized there are problems with Magic, so let's try to fix them, and then they didn't fix them, but made them worse instead. I do like Eternal. What about Quent? Oh, Quent again. So Quent is an interesting game, but Quent has a problem with it, and it's just kind of like Quent to me. You play for numbers. You don't really play for. It doesn't have that same tension because instead of trying to like kill your opponent and trying to beat them, what you're doing is you're trying to get like a high score over your opponent. Quent to me personally feels less, like instead of playing what I'm looking for in a competitive card game, there's a competition like Street Fighter in an arcade, right? You and another player are sitting at the same arcade and you have your sticks and you're like, Arr! You're playing, flicking the sticks around, and at the end of it, one of you wins, and it's like, yeah, I beat that guy. Like that's what I'm looking for. While Quent feels a lot more like a Tetris competition, where you're both at separate machines and you're both playing Tetris, and at the end of it, whoever gets the highest score wins, and that's great. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but I like that. It doesn't feel to me like I'm directly competing with this guy. We're just competing because we agreed to compete. Does that make sense? Where it's just like, there's nothing that actually like forces this competition, as opposed to it's just we are saying, hello, we are now competing. So I'm not a big fan of that. I've always found Quent to be a bit of a weird game that I couldn't quite fully get on board with. Well, yeah. So I'm just gonna make my own game. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. What about disasters? Well, every time I talk about card games, people want to bring up disasters, but as much as disasters is my baby. As much as I'm very proud of this game, this is not the kind of game I'm talking about. This is not it. This right here is a party game. This is something to play with some friends, together. It is a little bit competitive, but there's no deck building. There's no one-on-one. This is a board game. Really, that's what it's meant for. It's like a card game, board game kind of thing, not a competitive digital card game, which is what I'm talking about. I mean, first of all, it's not digital, as you can see. But yeah. So a card game tier list. Well, I think on my card game tier list right now, I think Hearthstone is still number one, which is sad. But Hearthstone does everything it wants to do well. The biggest problem I have with Hearthstone is that I wish it did more, but it doesn't. It just has always been the same, right? But I think despite that, as a game, it still stands at the top. Then number two, I would probably give to War of Omens right now, even though the game is very small, has 0 players, and frankly speaking, doesn't have the production value of these other games. I think in terms of pure gameplay experience, it is just better and more fun for me personally. Then number 3, I would like to give to Shadow Wars, but I just can't. I don't want to play Shadow Wars. I just do not want to play that game. It is too ugly for me. I just can't do it. I cannot stand it. I want to, because it seems interesting from a gameplay perspective, but I just cannot look past the visual disaster that it is. So I'm going to give it to Magic the Gathering Arena. Even though I listed so many problems with it, I think the visual presentation of it is just better. Then I'm gonna give it to Shadowverse. As much as I think gameplay-wise it is solid, I just cannot look at the game. It's blinding me. Like I get embarrassed for the developers when I see it. At that point, I'm not really too keen on making much of a ranking. Well, actually, let me put Elder Scrolls Legends. Oh, wait, Elder Scrolls. No, it is called Elder Scrolls Legends, right? But let me put Elder Scrolls Legends there, where I think Elder Scrolls Legends is actually a pretty good game. A bit gimmicky, a bit too simplistic for my taste. I wish they did a little bit more with it than they ended up doing. But other than that, I think it's pretty solid. Competitive experience-wise, it seems pretty solid as well. And last, I mean, like from there, I just would lump all of them together. To me, at that point, they're all kind of on the same level. Like they either. No, okay, wait, no, that's cheating. Let's not do that. That feels like I'm just cheating. Okay, then I think Duelist and Feria are kind of on the same level there. Then probably Eternal, and then probably Artifact. And I'm probably gonna put Quent with Duelist and Feria. That's where I think Quent goes. And then probably Eternal and then Artifact. But I think Artifact is really actually just the worst. And I don't mean that just to talk shit about it. Artifact actually had some neat things in it. So, for example, it did innovate quite a bit in how like the user interface experience for a digital card game can be. Like having buttons and ability buttons on cards, I think works really well. The way they handle equipment is pretty interesting. Artifact had some neat ideas. The biggest problem with Artifact is just it's not a card game. It's just not a card game. I don't know how else to say it. So on the card game ranking, it's just at the very bottom, right? Like they tried to make a card game out of something that just isn't a card game, and so it ended up not being very good. And yeah. Anyway, I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say. So let me tell me if you enjoyed this. Was this interesting? And if it wasn't interesting, was it something you would want to listen to even though it wasn't interesting? Right. For now, I'm gonna go. For the next topic, if you guys want me to pitch your card game, I don't want to do that right now because I just wanted to talk about these other games, right? I don't want to use this right now as an opportunity. Like I want to use this right now to just like advertise, because I feel like people are gonna kind of like be like, oh, he's just doing this to advertise his card game idea. No. That's not what I want this to be about. I just wanted to talk about card games. So I have thought about what I'm gonna do next time. I don't know if you guys are interested in this, but when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I used to read a lot of manga, like a lot of it. And recently, I was at the gym. I was bored. I didn't really want to play Hearthstone. I was on the treadmill. Well, actually, not treadmill. I used elliptical, but still, I didn't know what to do. So I kind of like went on the App Store and I found a manga reader. And I'm like, damn, I haven't done that in forever. So I downloaded it. And I started kind of like reading some of the mangas that I used to read when I was a teenager. And it's been a really interesting experience for me. It's been a really interesting experience for me that I think I can talk about for a long time. So I would like to kind of review everything that I've read and kind of like see like how they compare to like how I remember them. All right, you guys can keep spamming Weeb if you want, if that makes you happy. But yeah. So anyway, that's pretty much it. So let me know what you think of this. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.